Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Pleasure Points Podcast. I'm your host, James Rohr. Thanks so much for being here. This is the 50th episode, kind of a landmark. I've been doing this thing for a year now, so thank you so much for spreading the word, for listening, for writing in, for telling me, what you think and how things are going for you. Today's episode is an awesome one. I'm joined by Leah Kinsella. She's a yoga teacher and a meditation instructor. I started working with her at Canyon Ranch years ago, and she's an awesome episode. She really opens up about some things that she'd been going through and how she transformed it. Anyway, check it out. It's going to be great. You can follow her on Instagram at Leah Meditates, and her website is leahkinsella.com. And I'm launching a new Instagram, Inviting in Love. So this is for my relationship and coaching work. And if you are interested in that content, cultivating self-love, learning how to be a better partner and just, stay true to yourself as you are out there trying to be a loving force in the world. That's where that content's going to be now on Instagram at Inviting in Love. So thank you guys, as always, for being here. And here's to another year ahead for hopefully great content. Thanks so much. Enjoy. All right.
Okay.
Welcome.
Cool.
So the cat has
yes, landed.
You?
Yes,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yes. I think I have a tendency to do that. They like me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Super happy that you're here.
I know. We made it happen.
I've been watching your Instagram, your stories of like your home renovations, like you bought a home and
my God.
I haven't done that, Jen. I've talked about like, do we want to do that? We're both super non-committal to like Miami and like just a property and like all of the things. And then you kept having to go back to get permits. And I was just like, is that testing her meditative practice?
Yes to all of it. Yeah, I'm really glad I have a meditation practice. It's so funny because when I meditate now, or it's gotten a bit better, but the first probably 2 months of the process, I was like, I'm not meditating. This isn't meditation. I'm sitting down, I'm closing my eyes, I'm doing my practice, but my head was like a construction zone. I was basically like not in that meditative zone that I really prefer, but I knew it was still important to keep meditating. And then I started to see different sides of myself. Like I was getting angry with my contractor or pissed off with the city of Miami Beach or all these different things. And I'm like, you know what, maybe I need to do a little longer practice. So I actually took more time during the intensity of it all, like an hour a day to really focus on breathing, practicing some yoga nidra. And I found now this whole process has been a little easier. I'm a lot nicer. I'm less combative because my contractor has a short temper and the building person has a short temper. And then when I was getting thrown into the mix, I'm like, whoa, I didn't even know I had a temper like this. And I found having a meditation practice throughout this whole thing has been really, really, really beneficial.
What was happening with the city that they weren't granting you the permits?
It's the city of Miami Beach is very strict, and I live in an old building, and it just takes time. That's all. It just takes time. You have to go back and forth, and they like every dot has to be, dotted, and every T has to be crossed, and that's all. It was just a lot of back and forth, and everything is very time sensitive when you buy a place and then you want to get it renovated because I'm also living in my old apartment, so I'm paying rent and I'm paying a mortgage. And so things start to feel like you're in a pressure cooker, even though it's maybe been 3 months that the place has been under renovation, it feels like a very intense 3 months because there's a lot of money that's just being pissed down the toilet basically. And I'm like, so yeah, that's where it gets hot. It gets, and everyone's kind of pushing to get things done. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds intense. Jenny and I have been, we've been like deep in looking at getting a van, like a Sprinter van, and just like hitting the road.
Yeah. We want to do that too.
Because like all of that stuff that you just described of buying a place just sounds like so intense.
Yeah.
And, but it's like the only time in my life that I've ever almost had a panic attack or just like a full blown like anxious meltdown was the first time I bought a couch.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
You're funny.
It was when my ex-wife was pregnant and we were in Surfside and we were just like, well, like you're pregnant. There's probably gonna be a lot of sitting around. Like we should probably get like a proper couch.
Something to sit on.
Yeah. And because we had some shitty thing. And so we went and we bought like, one of these like fake leather, like proper, I think it cost like $800-900. It was like a huge investment for me at the time. And it was like a proper piece of furniture.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, and I was just so overwhelmed. I felt completely trapped by like my stuff,
Yeah.
And it happened again, not anywhere to that extent, but I don't know. I think I was moving in here. I don't remember where we were, but Jen just looked at me and she was like, "We can always just walk away. Like you could just leave your shit behind, and we could just walk away, and someone else will deal with it."
Yeah, I hear you. No, I went through a like existential crisis when I was buying this stuff or buying the apartment. I'm like, why do we need this stuff? Why do I need to play this earth game of having these tangible items? Aren't we just all ethereal spirit? And then I'm like, Leah, no, you're not. You have to work and you have to pay your bills and you have to go to the doctor and and owning something. I have been the same. I have not wanted to commit. I grew up moving. I immigrated from Ireland. I've traveled all over the place. My parents moved me to 5 schools in the 5th grade. Like, wow. I get it. So I think now buying something, though, I did it I want to have a child. I'm going to get married. And my dad just turned 80. And I was like, just commit to something. We can still have the van. We can still take the kid and drive off to wherever, Colorado, if we want to.
Right.
But, now I have something that I own. So, yeah, I'm playing. Awesome. I'm giving it a shot.
Yeah.
But I get it.
That's like, it's important, right? I mean, to get like in the financial... like owning property is like
that's what they say.
That's the game, right?
Yeah.
Theoretically, anyway. And it's like, and so we're looking at getting a van because we don't want to commit. And it's like, well, that's a depreciating asset,
I don't know, man. They're hard. Those Sprinter vans are pretty expensive. People they're desirable.
Yeah. But they're also expensive, and it's like, should we put the money into that, or should we like actually just buy it?
The good thing, if you get something, people can rent it. Like that's where I bought.
That's right. Yeah.
Where I bought is there's a little sliver of Miami Beach that's still affordable. And so that little sliver that I bought into, it's only going to grow and get better, and I can rent it I can make $500 a month on my mortgage. So
so you're close to the Carillon. I'm just putting it together. Okay,
I'm up
cool.
there. Yeah. I'm up by Normandy. So I'm and that that whole area is just it's continuing to grow. There's big plans for that whole neighborhood.
Canyon Ranch thought it was going to grow like 12 years ago, right?
No.
Or 10 years ago.
It's going to take 10 more years.
Yeah, now it's going to take a little bit. Yeah, it's the perfect time to be there. Awesome.
Yeah.
So when you guys when you immigrated from Ireland, where did you land? Did you come here to Florida?
No. So I was 7, so that it was like 1986, I think, something like that. And my Ireland at the time was going through a big recession. So my dad decided to sell everything and didn't tell me, which is a whole other segue. I think you should communicate with your children. They just thought, hey, Leo, we're leaving. And next thing I know, we moved to Los Angeles for a very short period of time because my parents had a friend that lived there. And then we moved from there I think we moved to New York, to Manhattan, which to me, coming from Ireland, Manhattan was terrifying. I wouldn't even go to school. I think I took 6 months off school because I was so scared of the city.
Wow. And
then we moved to New Jersey, and that was my first American school in the 3rd grade. And then we moved to Kentucky, and then we moved to Florida, and then we moved from Florida to Northern California. And that's mostly where I grew up. And then my parents had a job that took them from Florida to California every 6 months. So I went into boarding school for high school, and then basically... that was that. So I stayed in California and then moved to Florida 11 years ago. I've been here ever since.
Interesting. My son is 7, and his mom is going to be taking him to Italy in January. And, we'll see how long that lasts, how long they're going to be out there. She would like it to be for a while, and I think there's huge advantages for him to get that experience.
Yeah.
But that issue of communication is like a big one. And
it's
like,
tell your
do
kid.
You know what's happening?
Yeah.
Like, has your mom explained to you what's going on?
Yeah.
And, we've got a couple more months before that happens where I can talk to him too in person about it.
But, because what's happening.
It's a big thing.
It is big. Yeah. And I think the Irish don't talk about things.
Right.
And so I get it. And my parents really came from a generation where they didn't. I mean, my mom grew up in a tiny village where my granny had no phone till 25 years ago, where the milk bottles were still being delivered in glass bottles and left outside the door, So my father grew up in a small little home in Dublin where, there was 5 kids in a 1-bedroom and very different. So you just got on with life.
Yeah.
So they assumed, what are you going to tell your kid for? They'll figure it out, and I'm sensitive. I always have been sensitive. And I'm obviously over it with enough therapy now, but I think it helps. I think it helps to communicate with your kids, no matter how old they are,
Right.
talk to them like they're people.
Yeah.
And I'm learning when I have my own child, I hope to not totally fuck them up and communicate with them as best as possible.
Well, we'll definitely fuck him up, but
Yeah.
it's just, you try to do a little bit better, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the approach I've taken with Wyatt. It's just always, talk to him like he knows what's happening.
Yeah.
Assume that he knows. And, obviously you say things a little bit differently, but I never really talked down to him. We just explained stuff as it came up. I remember when my parents got divorced, I used to complain that they never told me anything. I was like, I didn't know. It's like, Dad's here and then he's gone.
Right.
And it's like, what happened? And it's like, is he coming back? Like, what's going on?
Right.
And we still had a relationship, but it's like, how come no one said what was happening? I remember being there when they were splitting up, they were walking through the house and I didn't remember, I didn't know what was happening, but I remember them being like, I'm going to take this, you can have that.
Oh, wow.
And it was later, I was like, oh shit,
that
they were
was it.
divvying up the assets.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like some communication would be helpful.
Yeah. I see it. I'm grateful my parents have made it through a lot, because when we came from Ireland, when we lived in Ireland, they were in a higher financial place in their life. And then when we moved to America, it changed. So I went from having all these fancy clothes and toys and things to living in a 1-bedroom. The 3 of us were sleeping actually in one bed at one time. My dad was waiting tables. And then when we moved to Florida, they got fired from a job and my dad lost a bunch of money because he tried to invest it. What they have gone through now, I'm grateful they're still alive and I can look at it and be like, wow, man, they were just doing the best they could, and we were living in a Motel 6 at one stage. My mom was pushing the cart around and my dad was working the front desk and they were still sending me to school. And I remember they bought me these Guess jeans because I really wanted Guess, and they probably had no money, but my mom got them for me anyway, and so now I'm like, okay, I get it. I've forgive myself and them and whatever. They just did the best they could.
What's that process been like for you to cultivate an emotional vocabulary or intelligence where we were joking before we started recording that I'm quarter Irish and they're just not exactly in touch with their emotions, or I don't think they're in touch with it. And if they are, they're certainly not verbalizing it.
No, they aren't. And the irony is some of the best authors and musicians come from Ireland. So if you're talking about something, it's usually through an art form. But in the house, in a typical Irish household, you don't talk, and it's unfortunate. There's a lot of things that don't get said, and arguing and silence, a lot of silence. I think I went to boarding school in Northern California, so near Big Sur and Carmel, and it was all
beautiful.
girls, and it was beautiful. And I grew up in this very sort of warm, nurturing environment for the age of 14 to 17, basically. And those were formative years in regards to talking with people that I knew loved me. And so I realized, oh, wow, this is actually kind of nice. I like this.
Yeah.
And then I would go home over the summers or school breaks, and my mom and my dad just didn't understand me, and I didn't understand them. But again, I was, 15? You don't understand your kids anyway when they're 15. But I always felt this sort of inner, joy or peace just from having a conversation with somebody. And then over the years, I have led myself in this industry where, it's normal to talk, and it's actually condoned, and it's supportive, and we're supposed to move through our feelings verbally. So building this vocabulary it hasn't happened overnight. I think it's actually really come to a head when I've run into trauma or had my own issues where I realized I wasn't fully communicating with myself. I'm great at talking to other people, but I don't think I was being fully coherent. I'm 43 now. It took a couple things to kind of wake me up and realize the one that we really need to communicate with the best is ourselves. And then yes, reach out, get help. I totally support therapy. I've been to a psychiatrist. I've done it all. I've had, I mean, when you were doing acupuncture, I remember back in the day there's lots of different healing modalities, but sitting down and meditating personally for me has really helped me develop an emotional intelligence. But yeah, you're right. I come from a family that doesn't talk. So how do I deal with them? I don't know. I honestly, I mean, there's triggers and habits, and I feel like a 15-year-old, and I feel like, a lot of the time, but over the years, I've just learned to listen and to love, and they're not going to change. Irish people are hard workers. They'll get the shit done. They're very reliable. But in terms of like softness and the emotional side, they're big softies. They'll cry and hug and they're there for you, but not when it comes to, we're going to sit down and talk about our feelings, and I've tried with my dad, and he's like, what do you want me to do? Like, what do you expect me to? And I'm like, okay, fine. So,
I was going to ask, like, because I've seen it a lot with my clients where, people have like these breakthroughs, they have that aha moment for them, and they're, they develop some, they realize that they need to communicate better, or they're like, they feel in touch with stuff, and then they want their whole family all of a sudden to be like they are now, and then that can create some tension where they're just like, well, come on, like, I've learned to speak this way, you need to speak this way too. And it's like, well, you're trying to shift like a multi-generational boat.
It's old. It is. I've tried that.
It's old, it's damp,
it's
heavy,
dense, it's heavy. I've tried. I remember my first couple yoga, like deep dives, where I'm 5 days in these beautiful like yoga retreats with my teacher's based in Colorado. And I used to travel around the country meeting him to do these really intense trainings where you're in this room for 8 hours a day doing pranayama and meditating and reflecting. And then I'd get out and call my mom and try to have like this heart to heart with her. And she's like, what? I'm at Walmart. Like, what? Like, this isn't working. So it, like I said, didn't happen overnight. And I think I was expecting them to change. And you're right. Like, sometimes the spiritual path can be a bit lonely, but it doesn't have to be. It's how we respond to ourselves is, again, what's most important. The world isn't going to change for you. You have to really change, and then it'll start changing around you.
Have you ever done Landmark?
No, I know.
Yeah. So I did Landmark. So it's got its huge pros and some like obvious sort of cons if you've at all scratched the surface of Landmark.
Yeah.
But the guy that led the Landmark forum that I did was, he grew up in Northern England. This guy was hysterical. And he tells one of what's become like one of my favorite stories is that he was doing his own like Landmark forum. And he was like, I realized that I never told my mom that I loved her.
Oh, wow.
He's like, because we're British and we don't talk about feelings. And, he told about how, she would deliver those milk bottles and then she had the kids doing it. And, she raised like 6 kids all under the age of like 8. And he was like, I just realized that I never told her that I loved her. And he was like, so on my break, I was like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to call her. And he's like, so it was like, noon and I call her and it's like 8 o'clock where she is. And I'm like, Mom, hey, I've been doing some thinking. I realized that I never told you I loved you. And she was like, yeah, like we like it when you're in town and you come up to the house.
Right.
And he was like, yeah, okay, great. Well, I just feel so great.
Right.
And he's like, and then we hung up and then I went back inside and I realized that I still hadn't told her that I loved her.
Oh, how funny. He talked around it.
He talked around it. He told her that he realized he'd never said it.
Right.
He never actually said, I love you.
Isn't that it? Well, it
and
doesn't
so then he's like, so then I run out there on the next break and I call her back and I'm like, Mom.
She's like, I get it,
I love
dude.
you. And she was like, yeah, your dad and I, we really like it when you're in town and you come over to the house.
Oh, they still wouldn't say it. Oh, it's hard.
I love that. The whole thing was just great.
Yeah. It's challenging. I mean, my dad was always very quiet as I grew up. He was working. I get that now, but I think it actually translated into a lot of my relationships because I thought my father was emotionally unavailable. So I would often date emotionally unavailable men, or I was familiar with, men who didn't communicate, men who,
Right.
So I would talk to my girlfriends about my feelings, but I wasn't comfortable talking to the guy I was dating about my feelings. And it has taken, again, years to just realize that it's almost like what we were saying at the beginning, like talking to your kid. Like, I think having these frank conversations with somebody, it may feel uncomfortable and how things land, but it really, our childhood, it doesn't have to define us. It's a moment in time that has brought us to where we are today, but we also have the choice to use it or, as a tool to change. And I think that's like, there's great qualities about my father. He's an amazing provider and a really stable, solid energy in the house. He just isn't a talkative guy. And I took it as a different thing because I was also kind of a bratty 15, 16, year old that, I don't know, maybe I was a bit selfish or something, but
that's that breakaway point. It's necessary. You talked about over like transforming like that Unavailable Men. Was there a moment when you like decided, okay, I like this guy, I'm going to like start sharing my feelings or like, I'm going to open up, or what was that process like for you when you all of a sudden felt like, oh, I'm actually laying the foundation for healthy communication now?
Yeah, I think I didn't notice it until I started loving myself. I gotta take that into consideration because I think a lot of the time I was dating these emotionally unavailable men, but I wasn't respecting myself 100%. And so the way it wasn't that they were treating me badly, but I also think it's par for the course when I wasn't being present with myself, that why am I going to attract somebody who isn't present in the relationship? Right. So when I dove deeper into my own practice, probably in like 2009, 2010 is when I really started like developing a home practice in my own apartment, like stuff like that. I noticed my relationship started to shift, and I had one bad one back then, and there was so much contrast and it was so much pulling because he was so unavailable that I decided to just stop dating for a while. I was like, this isn't something in me because I had enough awareness at that time. Right. And then I met around 2015, which is interesting because it really only started happening in my late 30s. When I was like 38, I think I actually consciously met the first real person that actually sat with me and let me communicate. Because in the past I would be talking to these guys, but I was talking at them. I think I was talking from a place of I need this and I want that. And whereas fast forward, I met someone who I felt very comfortable around, which was also helpful. He was very emotionally present. Yeah. And I noticed that when I spoke, it was more from a place of, how are you? What can we do? I started taking responsibility that my happiness is not his job, and I think, so when did it shift? Honestly, only in the last 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you talk about like loving yourself or being present with yourself, honoring yourself, like what did that look like in sort of like day to day or week to week kind of actions?
Yeah, I would do gratitude journal, like things like wake up in the morning, and I literally wrote down for almost 3 years 3 things I was grateful for. I was listening to gratitude on the way to work because I teach at like 7 in the morning, so really early sunrise time in the car. Happy gratitude stuff from like Abraham Hicks or something on YouTube. So I started, again, I teach in this industry, but I'm like, why not be my own student, and I chose a meditation practice that had a lot to do with heart-centered energy. So I really focused a lot of energy because I was feeling, I don't know, it was hard for me to be in the heart. It always felt like this heavy weight was on my chest, and I chose a practice where we go into the heart. And when I do a practice, I'll do the same practice for like over a year. So I don't really jump around when I do meditation practices. And I started doing that. And I also was going to talk therapy, just to kind of, so I made it almost my part-time / full-time job, because I also realized I really wanted at that time to be in a reciprocal relationship. And I have wonderful models, really good friends in my life, my parents, I'm like, okay, something's not clicking here, and it's time. So I brought in habits, I brought in things and tools. And
was there any change in your nutrition? Like sometimes when I talk to people about this, they talk about like, well, I stopped drinking, or I wouldn't, like when on dates, I would limit myself to 1 drink instead of like 2 or 3, or they go from meat to vegan or whatever, just as a way to kind of like
It wasn't
shift the
conscious,
physiology.
but it happened on its own. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm sort of like comfort foods. I'm resistant to changing my diet, but it happened on its own. I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking pot. It just kind of like, it wasn't, I didn't set a goal. It just happened. And I thought, because when I would drink, there's like, it's such a like a dullness in my energy. And if I'm doing all this work, the contrast, I'm like, I like the light better. I don't like this sluggishness, And listen, I still go out. I'll have a couple beers. Like I'm going to a wedding this weekend. I have fun, but it's not necessary for me. None of this happened overnight. This is a course of 4 or 5 years. And then I also had the person that I thought I really fell in love with, and somebody who I sat with and I was like, oh, this is a great relationship. Actually, we went through a really tough breakup 2.5 years ago. And when he left, that's when I really was like, whoa. I really dove into myself. And then I didn't date. I didn't have sex. I didn't do anything for 2 years. Not on purpose.
Right.
It just happened.
Wow.
And and now he's back.
Awesome. That's exciting.
I know. It's kind of a miracle, but yeah.
So during that time of the breakup and, when you're kind of hibernating or retreating, was it challenging for you to like be a meditation and yoga teacher when you're like hurting?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. I was sort of torn. Should I stop teaching? Should I just leave Miami and just get away from all of this?
Yeah.
But financially at the time, I just felt like, I'm like, what am I going to go to? I don't hardly have anything.
Right.
So I kept plodding along, and I use the word plodding along because I had the consistent work at the Carillon. I dropped a lot of other stuff. I dropped workshops and like things that took extra energy.
Yeah.
And I just kept showing up and teaching, but I've been teaching long enough where there was almost like a robotic quality to it.
Yeah.
And I knew that, and there'd be days when I'd go and teach and I'd get in my car right after class and I'd be crying and but I kept going and kept going. That was the Irish in me, where we tend to be a bit stubborn and we tend to just, like, I gotta get it done, gotta get to work.
Sure.
And don't, what are you worrying about? Get over it. But I've learned enough about myself that I have a hard time letting go, which I'm working on that. And B, I tend to stew. I tend to think things through, and I feel a lot, and it's hard for me to just shut everything down. But I needed to keep teaching. And I think a year into it, it was pretty bad. And one of my students, who's a professional psychiatrist, she pulled me aside after class, and she's like, Leah, you're depressed. And I kind of went, fuck, man, everybody, if she can tell, like, who else can tell,
Right.
And that's when, I ended up crying my eyes out and telling her everything. And,
Sure.
And then she was like, all right, maybe you want to get some help. And so that's actually when I started going to talk therapy. And it wasn't so much the breakup, because we all break up. It's not like I've not broken up with people before.
Yeah.
It was just, I was blaming myself. And I had also blamed him a lot for my shit. So when he left, I was confronted with a lot of my stuff, and I had a bit of a breakdown. It became a bit overwhelming. It was like a volcano that erupted with stuff that I wasn't dealing with, and I wasn't being present with myself. And that's when that student kind of pulled me aside. I thought, this is the universe saying, pay attention and take some action. And so that's really what instigated the deeper work, like I said, the therapy and the just regular acupuncture. And this was about a year. I won't lie. This was about a year of me like really taking care of myself. And I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking pot. I was like, let's go on this incubator for a little while. And I did. And it really was a beautiful, rough time, but it's what happened. I turned 40. I decided to freeze my eggs during that time, which was another really intense moment.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't know.
Chemical craziness too, right?
Well, I loved it though. That was the weird thing, is I was abnormal. Most women were telling you you're going to be depressed and you're going to be anxious and you're going to be bitter or tense, it's like really strong PMS. So that's why I went to a psychiatrist, because I was like, I'm going to be taking all these drugs. Do I need to go on other drugs? What's going to happen? Do I need to have blood work? I don't know what to do.
Right.
And he was like, just, you've already decided, go do it, and then come talk to me afterwards. So I signed up and I paid all the money and injected myself with hormones for like 12 days. But I had this amazing response to it where I was like on ecstasy and happy and I loved everybody. And so it ended up kind of being, I think my hormones were off.
Yeah.
Because I was depressed so much that when I took all that estrogen, I was like, wee, this is great. And it ended up being like the catalyst that actually really helped jumpstart me into what it feels like to be normal again. And so it came, everything happened beautifully. It just was, like I said, it was a long process. Yeah, I feel like now I know myself a lot better.
Yeah.
For when, God forbid something happens in the future, when my parents die or something like that, like I'll have more of a reservoir of, okay, this is what depression feels like, or this is what I feel like when I'm losing my mind a little bit. I've been there now once.
Yeah.
So I know what it's gonna, I know my triggers and I know what to do, and I have these great tools, and I hope to also help others that that I can sit with people a lot better now. I have more empathy now than I did in the past. Yeah, I do feel that.
You've earned some big emotional muscles there.
Yeah.
I remember your story reminds me of when I used to be really sick with the digestive stuff, and I just felt like such a fraud, like treating people and like being so sick, and like it was that conflict. I think for healers out there, it's like, I don't like that word, but you know what I mean. That conflict it's wicked. It's really intense. To reconcile that, and I would tell myself all the right things of like, I understand people better, and like I understand what it's like to be sick, and I'm in the stuff, and so I can help other people and stuff. And I would say all that shit, but at the end of the day, like it sucked to feel bad, and then like to then be in that position too, where you're trying to help other people feel better, and I still feel bad. It's just like, fuck.
Yeah, it's like a double-edged sword, because you're trying to help people, but you can't really help yourself. And then it's like I doubted my practice. I was like, what is this for? I had a consistent meditation and yoga practice for close to 15 or almost 20 years, even before all this happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I not enlightened? Why did this shit happen? How did I not see my blind spots? And it was like a huge wake-up call that, we still have these, like we said, the old, dense, familial, like, or just stuff that we've been carrying around our whole lives that we haven't really paid attention to. And it took a good kick in my ass for me to wake up to myself, but I definitely felt like a charlatan quite a bit teaching, because I'm like, I'm freaking depressed, and here I am trying to tell people to breathe in light. Like, it's not working, So my teaching became very banal in a way, just very midline for a while, because I was like, I can't bullshit my way through this.
Right.
So here, Warrior 1. Warrior 2, let's just keep it simple, I'm not going to talk to you about life right now. Surprisingly, though, people were attracted to me, a different type of people who were maybe sad, or they were going through something. And I noticed people would linger after classes that just wanted someone to listen to them because they felt maybe they resonated with my energy, or they felt safe with me. And I thought, oh wow, this is different, know. So I started attracting a different clientele.
That's so interesting. Because when I was sick, there was a time when I was like, my guts were crazy, and then I just like was binge drinking like crazy. I mean, every weekend we would just get hammered. Because I was like, I went like gluten free, and like that didn't do anything, and then I went like alcohol free for years, and like that didn't do anything, and I was just like, well, if I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't, I might as well just get wasted. It's like the Irish in me was like, fuck it, let's get drunk, Right. And man, we would drink on the weekends, and like Sundays I would be wrecked, and then like Mondays were still lethargic. I wouldn't feel right again until like Wednesday.
Yeah, it takes a few
days. And then
like
Thursday morning, I'd look at my roommate and be like, where are we going out this weekend? But what was so interesting was that during that time was like the busiest that my practice was in those first few years.
Isn't that weird?
And like when I was like super clean and felt great and like all this stuff, like the practice like totally slowed down. And then when I was just like barely holding on hour to hour to hour, I was slammed.
Yeah. So weird, right? It's
I
like,
was
how do
just
you make
like,
sense
what
of
is
that?
You know, I was like, I don't know. It was like,
yeah.
you know, it's like, are people, I mean, I was like, are people getting that much better? Like now that I'm feeling better, like that's the thing about like being an acupuncturist or something, you know, massage therapist, or whatever. It's like, if you're really good and people feel better, like they leave, they don't need to keep coming in.
True.
But it wasn't even that. It was just, I don't know. It was just a funny thing.
I think though the majority of the world, but a lot of people aren't necessarily healthy, or they're not necessarily tapped in, and so sometimes when I was in that space, I think I was also attracting people who, maybe a lot of people who needed to just move. And, you know, because my personal practice is very, very, very slow, and it's very, there's a lot of breathing involved, and I don't attract a lot of people for asana. I attract a lot for the yoga practice. I attract more for meditation. But during that time, I was just kind of moving bodies, and I would get kind of more frenetic people who just wanted to move. They didn't want to sit in their emotions.
Yeah.
But they would linger. Some of them would linger after class anyway. But I find, you know, maybe we tend to, as teachers, attract similar people to ourselves. Yeah, you know. So I just
we
think
teach
that was
the shit we need to learn.
Yeah, as they say, right? Yeah.
That's why I think about it with my coaching stuff, you know, with relationships and things, and you know, it's like I'm so focused on like being present and being kind. You know, like especially in this marriage with Jen, like that is the priority, you know, and it's like correcting from my behavior when I was married the first time, you know, and I just was stressed. I lived in that fear state, and like, you know, there were money things, there's all sorts of shit, you know, but it's, I think that's part of why I've chosen to do the work where I talk so much about being present and being kind is just like, it's a constant reminder for myself. Like it's that brainwashing for me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. I had it when my ex, well, he's now we're back together, but I wasn't being kind. You know, I was angry at our financial situation. I was angry at where he was in his life, and I was trying to communicate it, but I was talking at him. And it took him leaving or us to break up, and then for me, like I think I said before, to really sit with it. And now that we're being given this amazing opportunity to come back together with like pure transparency, I know my own triggers, especially with him, because there's certain things when you go back together with someone, there's certain familiarities, but I'm really cognizant of like, this is about me, you know, having a conversation, being kind, being patient, giving a soil that's fertile for both of us, you know.
Beautiful.
So it's and I feel, but it really came, and he's showing up in a different way as well, because he had to go through his own growth, you know. But I know, like, if you're constantly nitpicking at somebody and undermining them, it's not the, I don't know. I just think
that's not a good formula.
Not really. As much as you think it's helpful, because that's what I thought it was in the past, but there's got to be some way to find like a cohesive communication where, hey, this isn't working for me, or I don't know what it looks like for every couple. Yeah. But I know what I was doing in the past just wasn't working, you know. Yeah. And all he would do, which is shut down, and that it doesn't work for me either. So it's like, okay, let's try to talk.
So how did you initiate the reconnecting? Did he reach out to you? Did you reach out to him? Did you like bump into each other?
Well, we worked together for a long time at the Carillon, and then he left, which was the best thing that could have happened. And he deleted all his social media, which was also the best thing he could have done, because I was a little crazy.
Couldn't help yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't help myself.
Do I know who this guy is?
You might. Francisco, I don't know if he's a yoga teacher there. Yeah, you may or may not. Yeah. So we didn't speak for 7-8 months, something like that. And I was like, you know what? Like, I wish him the best. I'm obviously not the right person for him. He's not the right person for me. But I really hope he meets her. And he also wished the best for me.
Did you mean it? Like, did you feel
I did.
it?
Oh, yeah, I genuinely did. No, I did. I did for
huge.
A while.
That's a tremendous.
Yeah,
that's tremendous.
Yeah, it was big. I mean, we're 11 years apart, he and I. He's 11 years younger than me, which is different because usually the guy is older than the girl. And so there were some balancing acts that we're now figuring out that weren't there before. Yeah. So I was like, you know what, God, or mother, whoever, I was like, I'm not the right woman for him, because if I was, we'd be back. And so but it took me a long time, and I wished him well, and I burned a piece of paper, and I said thank you, and
Sure.
you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, I saw his work van one day up by the Carillon, and I just thought of him, and I was like, you know what, let me just try, let me see how he's doing. And I sent him a text, and this is like a couple months ago, and he writes back to me and he goes, I'm really sick, I don't know what to do, I'm throwing up. And I'm like, is he punking me? Does he know I'm texting him? Because we haven't spoken in quite some time. And
he's picking up mid-sentence. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, I haven't talked to you in a while. And then I said, are you okay? Do you need help? And he goes, yes, he had food poisoning and was having like massive stomach cramps and couldn't drive. He had tried to leave the Carillon. Anyway, long story short, I drive to meet him in the parking lot of a Walgreens, and I end up bringing him home and nursing him. And he's like, poor guy, I won't go into the details,
Sure.
but it wasn't a romantic moment. Let's just say
Understood.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
So but we were both very vulnerable, and we hadn't seen, so there was no pretense. We met each other almost at our best, at our worst, but it was a beautiful coming back. And he left the next day. He slept on my couch. He left the next day, and we just started talking. And he said, you know what? You came through for me. I realize how much I love you. There's nobody like you. And I said, okay, how about we start dating? Because I was like, I don't know if we can just start again. And he was like,
Sure.
you're right. Let's start slowly. So dating lasted 2 weeks. I mean, it was like we had a few romantic dates, and then we had sex, and then it was like, oh gosh, and I miss you. And we still are attracted to each other, and we are getting engaged. I don't know if I'm supposed to say it yet. And he's going to move into my new condo, and we're going to live together and get married and have babies, and it's a beautiful love story.
That's super exciting.
Yeah, so I'm excited.
It's hard to posture when you're like shitting or peeking your brains out.
Yeah.
There's something that I love about that is because it's, I don't know. I think about this like the internal work, and it's just like so much of trying to get rid of the posturing or to become aware of the masks and the roles that we play. I mean, I had that experience with Jen when we were together, then we broke up. And then as we were getting back together, I found myself like trying to posture a little bit, it wasn't even anything that I was saying, but there was like an energy. There was a way that I was carrying myself where I had this moment where I was like, I stepped outside of myself and I looked at myself as we were in the car together. And I was like, that's not real. Like, that's not like you at your best, like sort of authentic, whatever. I hate that word too, but like, and that was cool. Like like that's where I think all of the sort of the work has helped that kind of moment and the awareness happen. And then I was just like, okay, there's an opportunity here for vulnerability. Are you going to take it? And I was like, you got nothing to lose, right? It's like we're just trying to get back together to see if it's something that's worth pursuing. Yeah. And so I told her, and I was just like, hey, like I'm aware of like putting on a front and feeling like I need to put on a front in order for you to like me, and I was just like, and I don't want to do that. And so the only way I know how to not do that is at least to tell you that, like to talk, like to identify it and to let you know, and then that led to like her opening up, and it was like this amazing sort of moment.
So nice.
I don't know. It's like recognizing the mass that we have, and being sick, whether it's acute or chronic, has a way of stripping some of that stuff away.
Yeah, and it did for both of us, and it definitely did for him. I mean, he was like on the floor in my living room. I'm sorry, I haven't reached out. I'm like, this is not the time. It's okay. Like, it's all right. And I didn't know what that meant. It was also just this odd, like you said, we picked up mid-sentence. It was an odd thing. It was just a random act that I happened to text him that day. He happened to be sick, I mean, I really figured he was dating somebody. He probably thought the same about me. We both happened to still be single. Like, it was it's just interesting how it all played out. And the fact that we're actually now wanting to get back to it, could have just ended there.
Right.
We didn't have to start dating, but we saw something. And I think when the love is there, when it's really truly there, I mean, yes, you wish someone else the best, but I don't know. I don't know. If the love is there and it's worth exploring again, then it's great. Or you say goodbye. I've never gotten back with someone and now getting married. I've never been married before, but I'm like, this is a whole new thing for me. I've never had such a traumatic, like I genuinely, he has definitely been one of my teachers.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm grateful, and now I get to continue with him, which is pretty awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the retreat that you were telling me that you do, and you've got one coming up in January, and then one over the summer. Is he involved with that? Are you gonna?
So we want to work more together. He's a lovely yoga nidra. He's actually so my teacher's name is Rod Stryker, and I'm assisting him at a yoga nidra 5-day in April in Colorado, and
cool.
Francisco's going to take the training as a student. I'll be assisting.
Nice.
Yeah, so it'll be a really nice way. I get to introduce him to Rod, which will be great.
Cool.
But we would like to. I think that's part of our 5-year plan, maybe 2-year plan, or shorter, you know, where we do try to teach together. I'm doing a 3-day meditation training in January. That's just me. That's me. I limit it to 8 people. I do it out of my place, and we do a
Here
deep dive.
Yeah.
On 71st, and we do a deep dive into practices that you also take home with you, and you get to teach, and you get a lot of attention from me. That's why I keep it small, and from each other. So there's some teaching, practicing, and then some lecturing. Things like that.
Is there a theme, or do you have like an ideal kind of client?
That's a good question. Someone who's interested in sitting with themselves, you know, someone who's ready to hit the pause button.
Yeah.
And someone who's willing to answer some of those difficult questions, you know, and what they want to do with the information for themselves is, you know, hopefully I'm there to help them with that. That's where the coaching comes into play.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because that kind of meditation and coaching is like just immensely valuable, right? When someone is tired of repeating the same pattern over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I've been there, so I get it. You know. Yeah. And that's where I say, like, I had my own kind of breakdown and breakthrough. If you do want to change, there's going to be some discomfort.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have to be painful, quote unquote, but like, are you tired? And I know this is we've heard it before, but when you get tired of just doing the same thing, you get tired of that. Like, is it more painful to stay the same or change? You know, which which discomfort do you want?
Yep.
So I'm ready for those people that are ready. You know, they're ready to make some sort of a shift. And like I said, it doesn't have to happen overnight. It doesn't have to be walking over coals of fire and jumping out of an airplane. Maybe, but that might only last for a week. It might only last for a month. You know, I think long, sustainable change takes discipline, and it takes some time. There are great catalysts. Take a trip, disappear, do whatever. I don't know. I'm not a big ayahuasca person, but people do that kind of stuff. Like, you know, but the sustainable practice, that's where I come in. That's where I'm like, I really believe in him.
That's when with the ayahuasca and any of the psychedelics, like if I hear people talking about it, like the first question that I'll usually ask them is like, so how is your life different now? You know? Because it's one thing, and I've done it. You know, it's like it's one thing to have like an amazing trippy experience, but then it's like, how does that translate into your life? You know, it's like, how are you a shifted, different, you know, human being? You know? And having a daily practice is amazing. Now, what happens with your trip to Ireland? What's that all about?
Thank you. So the Ireland is 7 days and 6 nights. And since I'm from Ireland, it's great. Come with me because I know where to go. But you fly into Dublin. It's in June next year. So the weather's relatively nice. You still need like a sweater and a pair of jeans for Floridians. But we take a bus. I arrange transportation 2.5 hours south of Dublin to a very bucolic, the rolling hills and the cows and the thatched roofs. It's a nice part of the country called Wexford. And there's a retreat center, a relatively new retreat center. So all the rooms have been redone and new bathrooms and things. And they have this lovely big room where they have sound bowls and like, it's like they have tons of instruments. I don't know why they have so many, but it's really nice. And we do lots of meditation, yoga nidra, some hatha yoga, so it's relatively gentle. And then we take 2 excursions.
Nice.
Yes, go see the countryside. And then I recommend people either stay for another night because they have to fly out of Dublin, or a few and go see the rest. But yeah, June 15th to the 21st, 2020.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've never been to Ireland, and it's I've wanted to go. It's just never been a priority. I mean, with my family history,
Yeah.
part of us are from there, and it just seems so. It looks beautiful.
Go. I mean, Dublin now, there's a direct flight Miami-Dublin. Aer Lingus just
nice.
opened it up last year. And I flew last year for $525 round
Awesome.
trip. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was really easy. And you just get on the plane, you get off in Dublin. I think you arrive at like 9:30 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And Ireland's very easy to get around. It only takes 3 hours to drive across the country. So there's buses from the airport that'll just take you all over the country, or you can rent a car as long as you're okay driving on the left. Which I can do it, but I don't know if I'd recommend it the first time.
Yeah, it might be a little stressful.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
thank
How can
you.
people find you, follow you, Instagram, website, or whatever?
Thank you. My Instagram is Leah Meditates, so at Leah Meditates. And then my website is leahkinsella.com. So KINSELLA.com.
Awesome. Check it out. You guys looking for a meditation getaway, you can come here to sunny Florida in January, right? It's January. And then or go to Ireland in June. Thank you guys, as always, so much for listening. This is our 50th episode, I think. I can't believe we've made it a year. So thank you for tuning in. In honor of the 50th episode, I'm launching a new Instagram for my coaching program. So you can check that out at Inviting in Love on Instagram. So I'll be posting more relationship-specific stuff there. And thanks, as always, and we'll check you next time.